We're going to call this Finance Committee meeting to order. Mr. Coyne is on vacation, so I will be filling in tonight as Council Pro Tem. Our first assignment or request for council action for the Finance Committee, 19053 fund transfer to the Parking Fund, 19054 fund transfer MCRC capital contribution, 19055 then and now M&L supply for the fire department, 19056 then and now comp management for the finance department, 19057 then and now Medina County Economic Development Corp, 19058 SPCA annual funding request, 19-059 bids for the 2019 concrete street repair, 19-060 bids 2019 concrete curb installation on East Liberty Street, 19-061 expenditures over $15,000 for Davis Tree Farm, 19-062 cooperative purchase 2019-2020 sodium chloride, 19-063 amend codified ordinance 1945.02G for park restrictions, 19-064 expenditure signal service company for the street department, and one item for special legislation 19-065 discuss single-use plastic and paper bag environmental impact. I think we're going to go out of order here just a little bit because our first item, we're working on some technological challenges. So if we could, if everyone's okay, we'll start with number 3 on our list, which is discussion of potential railroad quiet zones. And I thought I saw Patrick did.
Yeah, sure.
Pat's here. So Pat, were you going to start?
I can introduce it. Yeah, we were, last time we talked about it, council asked me to put together some information about the possibility of establishing a quiet zone in the city. I did prepare, and I think I emailed to everyone what we came up with. Basically, for us to establish a quiet zone, we would have to, it's a long process, but in essence, we have to install another safety measure, supplemental safety measure. Taking the horn sign away removes one of their safety measures. All these crossings have gates already, so we needed something in addition to that. The 3 possibilities, one is delineators. There'd be, and the idea is to prevent cars from going around the gate. So they have accepted in the past. Twinsburg did this when they established a quiet zone a couple of years ago. Basically 100 foot in either direction, either approach, delineators down the center line to prevent cars from pulling around. And I should note, I say 100 foot, we don't know, that's what Twinsburg did, and I would assume if we did it, that's what we would be required to. But until we go through the whole process, ORDC has a diagnostic review of each of the crossings. We don't know, they may ask for more, I don't know, but we're just assuming the 100 foot would be acceptable. The second would be a raised concrete median, a curved structure that would straddle the center line and again prevent cars from, I guess they could, but discourage them from jumping over the curb and going around the extended gate. And the last one and the most expensive one is what they call 4-quadrant gate system. And basically that's putting, instead of the 2 gates, one on each side of this track, you put 2 gates on each side of the track, 4 gates altogether to have the gates cover the entire width of the roadway. That one is by far the most expensive. We did put together some estimates for that. I did speak to the state and the federal people about funding. There just isn't any state or federal funds available for any type of quiet zone establishment. So we would be on our own locally to come up with that. And I guess the other thing I wanted to mention, we have 2 railroads in the city. One's ours, one's Wheeling and Lake Erie's. We focused only on Wheeling and Lake Erie's railroad. They have 10 crossings in their system in the city. I did present estimated dollars for both doing every one of those crossings from Smith Road west of Lake all the way to Guilford. But then I also did a smaller one, thinking maybe that would be something that would be preferable because it would be less expensive. Quiet zone has to be a minimum of half a mile in length. And it's just about half a mile from, I think it was Prospect where I started, all the way to Broadway. Yeah, starting at Prospect going east to South Broadway. There's 7 crossings there. That could potentially be a quiet zone. So that, in other words, the train would still have to blow their horn at Smith Road, west of Lake, at State Road, but then it could be quiet through town, and then it would have to, again, blow their horn at Guilford, if that was something we wanted to consider.
Okay. That would be Mr. Lamb.
I have a question, Patrick. So we've got the options, and we've got generally, I guess, we've got the costs.
We do. One thing you have to remember, we don't have 100, we can't just decide we're going to have a quiet zone. We decide that we want one, we go through the process and request one. We don't have the authority to establish
Right,
it.
that's my question, though. If we said, okay, we prefer this option over this option, could we submit that option
Yes, absolutely.
now and see if it would be approved?
Yeah, they would do if we're going to do this, they would do a diagnostic review of each of the intersections, or crossings, I should say. There's a scoring rating system that they use, and based on that, establishes what type of safety measure is acceptable.
So we would be putting, we could look at, if we chose an option, so we like this one, option B, then you could submit that, and we would put no money, and we're not putting any money in.
No, at that point, it's just effort.
It's just an effort, we put that option in, and then we hear back, yes, that this satisfies the, the criteria you need to meet for this will work. So that's not the issue, that's not an issue for us then, I mean, if we, because we can find this out ahead of time without anything up front.
That's true, yeah. That's what Twinsburg did. They did all the legwork themselves. It did take them a couple of years to get through the process, but they didn't have any cost for any kind of consultant or anything. They did it all themselves. I'm sure we could do it as well.
Does the review process take a couple of years? Or what, are you talking about the whole?
The whole thing, from
The whole thing?
their original idea till having it established.
Okay.
But there is, it's a team. They come out and they review each crossing and do whatever they do. It's got to go through a couple different levels of review too. The PUCO, the RDC, and the FRA all comment and review it. That takes some time, I guess.
Yeah, so it's got to be fairly time consuming, so the sooner we made a decision, be it yes or no, or yes, and this is the option, the better for the project.
Right.
Okay.
Patrick, are you able to combine a couple different options? Like, let's say at an intersection where we could do the curve, but then another intersection where you could
Sure.
not, you could do.
Yeah, each crossing is evaluated individually. They don't all have to have the same type of, safety measure. It can be different. You can do all 3 different kinds if you wanted.
And when you said 100 feet both ways, what happens when you have an intersection? I mean, do they then start it again on the other side of the intersection, or is that what they determine when they come out?
Yeah, I think that's when they come out. Are you thinking like South Elmwood?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, that one could be tricky. I don't know. I'm not sure what they would come up with that.
Intersections really close. I don't know how you put it
Yeah,
there.
you have that one driveway a little bit further west.
Yeah. Mayor?
Thank you. So, Charles Marshall is here, who is the developer for the Farmers Exchange, and asked the city to do some of the review on this for the benefit of the apartments that he's going to rent at the Farmers Exchange. So I think he would like to speak on it. And second of all, just at Board of Control today, is Mr. Buford?
Yes.
Okay. He cautions the council that right now, with leaving it the way it is, the trains have to use the signal, and if there's a collision between a motor vehicle or a pedestrian and the train, the liability is with the railroad company. If the city permits a quiet zone, some of that, or possibly all of that liability shifts from the railroad to the city, which is of some concern, as you can imagine, Mr. Huber, and I just want you all to be aware of that as well. So I'll turn it over to you, Jim.
That made me think too with Patrick, what was Twinsburg's original reason for deciding to apply for it? Was there something particular and unique to their community?
I don't think so. And if you look at it, I haven't been up there, but Google Earth, it doesn't seem to, the areas don't seem to be as densely populated as ours are. Someone was, but I think they just had a desire to not have the train sound anymore. And I think they only had 5 crossings, if I remember right.
I wonder if did they say anything about the liability issue or?
Did not, no. They talked a lot about the maintenance. They had the delineators, I guess there are constant maintenance issues. At one point, they actually lost their quiet zone because so many delineators were knocked down and they hadn't replaced them, repaired them. I don't know if it's the railroad itself or the rail commission, whoever, basically made the trains start using the horns again until they got it repaired.
Anybody else from council at this point?
As far as the liability and the safety issues, and the police and the mayor would be able to address this more than I, but I don't think, since the lights and the gates have been up, that we've had any car train accidents. I know we did prior to that, but with the establishments of the lights and the gates, I don't think that in the city limits anyhow. I know we had one pedestrian, but I think that was, if I remember correctly, that was probably intentional.
Yes, sir.
But I think the safety issues that we has been established in the last 10, 15 years, whatever it's been, has worked. So I understand the strengthening of that for the proposed quiet zone, but not only for Mr. Marshall, if we were able to establish that quiet zone, I think there'd be a lot of residents that would be, very, very happy. I think it would benefit. Now, the liability, I understand Mr. Huber and our concerns. That's something that we do need to consider, and maybe with Mr. Land's suggestions of maybe incorporating out of the 3 or 4 areas that we could use, maybe less expensive in one area and more expensive in the other, where it's more high traffic and more high pedestrian. But yeah, that's all I have.
Eric?
Mine's more of a statement, but and we're talking about Mr. Marshall's plan here because it will help his building, but at the same time, if you look at the city's master plan, we're talking about trying to redevelop the South Huntington, South Elmwood, and West Smith area. This directly goes through it, so that might help us in the long run of constructing future businesses, apartment complexes, whatever we plan to put in these areas might attract the people that actually live there.
A couple things I'd like to mention. I can't imagine Nino's real impressed with this plan due to street maintenance and plows and things like that.
That would be correct, sir.
We'll have to weigh that issue. But as far as Ward 1, I don't like to hear the fact that we might eliminate a couple on the west side of town to keep costs down, because we still have residents living near those intersections.
Throwing it out there, it's
I know.
up to you.
I know. I'm just throwing it back.
We control the purse strings, remember?
Mr. Marshall, would you like to?
Please, thank you. First of all, let me compliment Patrick on one of the best reports I've read in a long time. He took 3 different choices. He talked about who's responsible. And what's important is that the FRA, Federal, Rail Association, has to make the final decision. Mr. Lamb touched briefly on the point that we could apply for a quiet zone and what we'd like to put in or what you'd like to put in and get their determination before any money's spent. Under the legal implications, today's world is a liability world everywhere. Everyone's got a reason not to do something because of liability. But in the report, it says that the FRA rules is intended to remove failure to sound the horn. The rules from the federal government are designed and intended to remove the failure to sound the horn as a cause of action in lawsuits. So you have the backing of the federal government in their wording about any ambulance chaser who wants to sue you if someone gets hurt. I dealt with the railroad in the development of this site, and they did a lot of things that I had to either agree or forget doing it. One is to put up a cyclone fence that is a see-through and no taller than 6 foot. So if someone comes up to the railroad on their phone and can't hear or see the train, you know, that they're protected so they can see down and see this huge train coming down the line. It gets to a point of ridiculous, but you know, I have to accept it. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is that a year ago, approximately a year ago, when I met with the mayor, I don't have the date, and other members of council, I pledged, at that time we had an estimate of $100,000 to do the cost. It's gone up in price. If you take the 7, it's $115,000. I pledged $50,000 as a private developer. Not for just my development, but for the benefit of the city. I had indicated that last summer. I heard a great speech on the square downtown, a gazebo, the mayor talking, a train went through. I didn't hear a word he said. I knew it was good information, I just couldn't hear it. There's gonna be more maintenance for Nino, something for snow plowing, but that's development and changes in roadways and turn lanes and everything else. I can't see that the expense of changing some of the upright plastic little dills is a big deal. You got 20 in stock, you go take a nut off and put it in, it's done. I think you should find out what the cost is and what's gonna be approved. And you should take advantage of money that someone's trying to partner with you. That will benefit not just me, of course it'll benefit me, that's why I started it. But it's gonna benefit the city as much, if not more, for future development along the rail siding. I know that developers have looked at areas and they said no because of the noise. So, I don't know where you take it from here. I'll tell everyone on council that, in the public here, that we have a timeline on the project. I'm anal about timelines, absolutely nuts about them. And I make them, I hit them. But it would be important to me to get this moving forward at a faster pace, in so much as that this fall, we plan to open up the first floor and the apartments, quite frankly, by October of this year. Verbally, I've told people that the city's looking into it, which is a great, the last one I told the train was going by at the same time. You know, so I said, oh, by the way, you know, let me yell at you. I'd like to get it moving because it's been a while. And of course, the report, I know Patrick's got maybe 200 things to do on his desk on a daily basis. But I'd like to see if you could prioritize this as far as the application, the review by the federal FRA to tell you what's acceptable, what's not, so you can come up with a realization of what the real cost is. Whatever the real cost is, take 50 grand off of it. I'll write the check. I don't think many developers come in and say that to a city, do they?
Not too often.
Yeah. Usually the city's telling us what we have to do. What?
Maybe not the train.
No, that was spousal business.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry, we talked about this, she's my kind of memory bank. The conductor of the train, who's driving the train, conductor, whatever it is, he has the capability of seeing ahead and watching. His job's supposed to be watching what's coming up. He has a right to override this no-blow zone anytime he feels that there's a factor affecting that he needs to warn somebody. That's a standard rule with the railroad. What's the speed limit of the railroad in the city?
25.
25? Have you ever had them shot? Are they going the right speed?
I don't think they're going any faster than that now.
Well, I don't know, I shoot them. Hey, you ever pull a train over?
I actually have, yes.
Really? You're a ballsy guy. I never thought someone would. But the railroad, in their comments to Patrick about charging the city for repairs and maintaining their gates, was something that reminded me of dealing with them and how difficult they can be, our way or no way, you know? And I happen to acquiesce so many different ways to them. Not really changing the development in itself, but it's just difficult. $500 a day for a real estate guy to come out and walk the site with me. Ridiculous, but that was their bill. Is that true? They charge you for repairing their gates?
They indicated they would for these. They don't do it now, but they felt that adding the 4-quadrant gates is above and beyond their
Oh,
responsibility.
the 4-quadrant gates?
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you want four, that's $2 million. Nice little picture of a German town in there of their 4-quadrant gates, but that's over everybody's budget. I think the $115,000 for 7 gates is the starting point, and then maybe over time expanding it to the 10 gates, because it works well, would be beneficial to the city. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marshall. Mr. Huber, do you have a comment?
Mr. Marshall is exactly correct in describing what it's like to deal with the railroad. And we've experienced this ourselves as a municipality in any number of different issues that come up. If we create a quiet zone, what we do is take away from the railroad its primary defense in a railroad accident scenario, and that is the horn. And I can guarantee you that if we don't put in the gold standard at a crossing and an accident happens, the railroad's absolutely going to come to the city and bring us into lawsuit and claim that because we altered and took away their primary defense, that's a factor in the overall analysis of negligence as to why that accident happened. If we put in the gold standard at these railroad crossings, at least we have that to offer if we get pulled into a case. What I'm particularly concerned about is discussion of the expense and not wanting to spend the money to put in the very best that needs to be put in at a railroad crossing. I've been in 3 cases involving railroad litigation, and every one of them has involved monies in the areas of $1 million to $2 million. Because railroad accidents are not like your normal car accident. So I've talked to some law directors. Most lawyers representing municipality are going to advise, if you're going to do this, put in the very best. And then make sure that you have a proper maintenance program. Because if the railroad can find a way in an accident to bring us into the case, we're in it. And beyond that, that's really the warning I give you.
Thank you, Mr. Huber. Council, do we want to, I mean, it doesn't cost us anything to go forward and find out some more information. And obviously, Mr. Huber, no disrespect to your opinion, obviously we have some time to talk about that too, even while we're waiting to see what the railroad says and get a cost. The gates will still be there too that are already there, right?
Yes.
Those don't go away. So
Right.
the current gates.
Yes, sir. It seems like exactly what Eric said is part of the discussion. You know, it's not simply for the Farmers Exchange, but Eric hit the nail on the head with we have a strategic plan about that southern area of town that could be developed and be an economic benefit to us, which is actually a recouping of funds. And then on top of that, with the development of the Farmers Exchange, which I've noted a couple times is probably the most significant thing to happen near the historic districts, is the restoration itself. You know, and we all knew that was we've looked at Albatross actually for years and concerned that nothing was going to happen. And now I think we have a really good development that can play a role in more development on the south end of town. And so On top of that, I think clearly time is of the essence, I suppose. You want to be able to tell people in a more definitive way, are we going to have quiet zones or are we not going to have them? And so I would be, the best thing we could do, I think, would be to go forward and give, Patrick an idea of what we're looking at and have him submit it and get the process underway, and then we can see if it's satisfactory. I mean, we could go, I guess, out months and months and months, and then they could come back and go, nope, that's not good. Or they could come back and go, yes, it is, and then we can say, okay, can we pay for it? How are we gonna pay for this? And I do recall a meeting when you offered the $50,000, when we were looking at a much lower cost, which is a benefit to us as well, which I think indicates quite, not only the development that's happening at the Farmers Exchange, but that commitment to this project, to have this done. So that's my 3 cents worth.
May I say one other thing?
Sure.
I understand what Mr. Huber's saying is a protection for lawsuit, and that's his job. I read the one line of what the federal regulation was intended to remove the failure of the sound, and I told you that the train conductor can always blow his horn in the event he sees something. But does everyone understand that what they're putting in, you always have gates at every crossing, and the only accident that could occur is someone trying to sneak around the gates and beat the train, crossing the median. That's what the safety factors we're putting in. We're putting in safety factors to prevent cars from going between the gates and around. I can't see how. Of course, in today's world, anyone can get sued for anything, and the railroad can bring you in, but you have insurance too to protect you for the stupid. But, come to think about it, the common sense still overrules in a lot of these cases. That I don't see how someone could sue the railroad because they didn't blow the horn when they're going around the gates, when the bells and whistles are still ringing. We still have bells and whistles, audible alarms. We just don't have the horn. And if the conductor sees it, he can blast that horn in a second. So all we're asking to look at and cost with Patrick is how much and what is it that you have to do. Then you can decide legality, maintenance, everything else involved.
Patrick, do we have to say we want option 1, 2, or 3 when we make
I
our
don't know that. I was
application?
sitting here thinking about that. I think they do the diagnostic and,
Recommend?
yeah, it would determine, all right, these 2 are acceptable, these ones not, or something like that.
Okay, what do you need from us to get that
Yeah,
started?
there's nothing.
Yeah, I guess just indicate you want us to go ahead. I mean, we're pretty much applying for a quiet zone to go through the process, which is fine. We could come to the end and decide, well, we don't really want to do it, or we don't have the money, but
Or they could say we can't do it, but.
they could say
we
you
won't
can't
know
do it,
that.
right. But yeah, I guess you're indicating we pretty much want to start the process to establish a quiet zone.
I'll make a motion that we encourage this administration, including Patrick, to make the application for the quiet zone to the railroad, and we'll go from there.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, passes 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
Okay, do we want to go back to, are we ready with the technology? We want to go back to item number 1, or item number 2, with update on the Huntington House?
Well, thank you so much for the patience. I appreciate that. My Apple didn't really talk to the cords over here. So thank you. And thanks for all your help, Keith and John. Appreciate that.
Mrs. Sharp, can I ask you, how long is the presentation?
Well, I haven't run through it, but at least 10 minutes, if
Okay,
that's okay.
that's fine. We've got a full agenda, so I just wanted, I don't think we knew there was going to be a PowerPoint, so I want to make sure we get everything in tonight.
Well, it's mostly pictures.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for allowing me to present this evening. And thank you to everybody who came to support the project. As you probably know, this is about 347 North Huntington, and it's about the Sophia Huntington Parker farmhouse and preserving it, preserving our history. I wanted to thank everybody for your support of the project. I've had really a lot of community support, and these are some of the folks who have really stepped up to say thank you, and to work with me and to provide support. We've had our wonderful historic districts and our CDC, and the mayor's been wonderful, and Main Street Medina, and my college. We have just a wealth of professors who know all about this at Cleveland State. They've been helpful, and the Cleveland Restoration Society's been great. Kathleen's been working with me, so I appreciate even the schools taking time to allow us to go through the house and all of that. They've been just, you have all been wonderful, so thank you very much for everything. I do really appreciate that. It means a lot, because this is an important project for all of us, and it can really work out very well for all of us. So I wanted to show you a few of the support letters that I've received. Actually, the statement from the CDC is a resolution to support the Sophia Huntington project. And while we don't have to go through that, I can give anyone copies of this, but there it is. And we also have a statement of support from the Restoration Society. And Kathleen Crowther, she's the president of the Restoration Society in Cleveland, and she really has a high respect for the city of Medina. She holds us up to the cities of like Chagrin Falls and Hudson. I mean, we're comparable to them as far as our history goes, and I felt good when she did that. So we need to remember that, because really I believe that our public really they make economic decisions based on how we represent ourselves, and we are historic Medina. We have to remember that. Okay, so sorry that this doesn't exactly fit, but here are a few images on how the Huntington family was significant in the beginning of Medina. And I know at this city council meeting, probably 3 weeks ago now, Councilman Bill Lamb made some comments about the history of Peter Huntington and how he came with his family, made several trips back and forth from Connecticut to establish his home here. And I don't know if okay. So I just wanted to show you a few of the things, like that 1834 plat map. It's kind of hard to see in the middle there. You can already see that Peter Huntington had 100 acres in 1834. So he established that very early on and built his house. And the 1857 Medina County Atlas right there, you can see the footprint of the house just as it is now. So the original square Greek revival with the wing on it, that's all the same as it was in 1857, which I think is really cool. And there's the tax duplicate that I was talking about in my previous presentation, showing that the Huntington home, the actual building, is worth $250 back in 1840. By 1850, by the way, if you look at this census here, his Peter Huntington's farm, all of the acreage and the building on it, the house, was worth $4,000. So it's pretty impressive that it increased in value. But I think that really that goes to show how significant the Huntington family was in Medina at the time. And Sophia, here's her photo. Doesn't she look like a brooding woman, though? So she was quite the woman, and she outlived every single one of the other Huntingtons. And she was something. I found her will, and I read through her will, and it was very long and drawn out, and it was published in the newspaper. And if you're not up with the history of Medina, you may not know that Sophia, in her will, designated $1,000 to be placed into someone's trust to dig up her relatives from the Old Town Cemetery and move them on over to the real big, nice new cemetery and put this nice stone there and bury her whole family together. So you can see that she really had a lot of pull. She had a lot of money, and she donated a lot of things in her life to the town of Medina, including a large stained glass window in the Evangelical Church, which is the oldest and most valuable stained glass window still in that church. Okay, so in Sophia's will, and this was after I had the desire to turn Sophia's house into a community center and living history museum. I found this in her will, and I want everyone to imagine Sophia not only dedicated her money and her land to the old ladies' home, which became, of course, the Pythian Sisters' home, which was torn down in 2017. But she also asked that if that home wasn't built or if the land wasn't utilized, she wanted her farmhouse to become an outing home for poor children from crowded cities in Cleveland. And so that they should live a good life and come down to the open, fresh air of her farm, which I was very touched by that, because I thought, wow, that's pretty aligned with what I was thinking of doing with this house, and it really it meant a lot to me. And she said she wanted to make this place permanent and to not have her real estate ever be sold. In order that the outing home would continue for children. So she even requested that the trees not be cut down unless they fell down or needed to be pruned. So that was never really talked about in her will, and I found that was pretty interesting. And I think she spoke to me through that, really. Also, during my research, I found an Ohio Historic Inventory form, which is filed with the state of Ohio. And this form was done in 2004, and it is actually down in the state, and it designates the house as a historic resource. And the woman who had done this inventory sheet, she was from Medina at the time. I believe she was on the design committee. I don't know if she's still there, and I actually don't remember her name, but her point was that this was, at the time, only one of a handful of Greek Revival homes still present on the street, and that was in '04, and I honestly do not think many are surviving at all on that street now. I can't think of any. Okay, so the Medina, interestingly enough, the Medina County Planning Commission defines in their definitions, in their planning guidelines, they define the Ohio Historic Inventory Form as an inventory of state-recognized historic resources, which then that would define this home as a historic resource. So the school district was kind enough to let us in. The facilities director let my husband and I go in and tour the home on March 7th, and we were absolutely stunned by the good condition of the home. From what we had heard, it was going to be in terrible shape, and we were really shocked that, now if you could get past the cosmetic, like when you walk in and see the indoor outdoor carpeting that is in it's trashed. Like, there is trash everywhere, and cosmetically it looks horrible. But structurally, this house is sound as a rock. I mean, it is so sound. And you can see the mortise and tenon joinery here. This is very old style building, and it is really cool to see. And this is so well preserved, and the wood is beautiful. This is in like the eaves on the side. It's like 1.5 stories, and it's in the eaves and the side on the second floor. It's really preserved very well, and I can see how how the first floor could be just brought up to, you know, code and made modern downstairs to have like a community center, meeting area space, and then the upstairs could be put, you know, have plexiglass put in front of it and everything, and show how the building techniques were back in the day. So there's a lot that can be done with that. Okay, and this is really cool. I never have seen a real gas light still attached with its fixture still in the wall, which is really neat. And hand-hewn support beams, as you all, a lot of people probably have seen, and we have in our homes too. Okay, so environmental planning guidelines. This is our planning committee. We have these guidelines, and they suggest that we protect our historic resources. And I won't continue with this long because I know we're short on time. But really, it states that as much as possible, we want to protect and preserve these historic locations. I also noted that we should coordinate with the Ohio Historic Preservation Office when we do a project like this. And that we really, I think that the one, oopsie, I can't go back now. But anyway, I think that we really ought to be considering what the Planning Commission suggests, that we use the free space of Mellert Park to buffer this historical structure and the location, the land that it's on. Now, with this in mind, I would like for everybody, especially the Finance Committee members and Mayor Hanwell, I would like for you to all please consider a new concept that I am going to be suggesting. Please consider this with an open mind and put other ideas that we had sort of aside just to consider this, and I ask that you hear me out on this. First of all, we've been really doing things have been happening with record speed. We've already gotten the Building Blocks Preservation Group, the corporation has been established, and the 501c3 paperwork has gone through, so that's all done. And our purpose is advocating for the appreciation, preservation, and protection of Medina's historic heritage. And we have a lot of community support for the project through the Facebook group, and we also have 3 verbal pledges for the support of $40,000 for restoration and preservation of the farmhouse. And I'm hoping that if the project continues, that we will be able to maintain that. Yes.
Is that total or $40,000 each?
No, I'd love to have that, but no, that's total. That's total. But you know, Eric, I could talk to you later. So maybe you got something in mind. Okay, so as you see, this is the parcel as it stands now. The blue line is the parcel boundary, and the Ray Mellert Park and the parking spaces. There are currently 14 parking spaces and 1 handicap spot. And as the city has stated, your desire was to extend the parking spaces and park area in Mellert Park. And so my suggestion would be that, oopsie, oh shoot, let me go back here. Okay. Again, this was the original one, and one of the ideas is that we could meet in the middle and do something where you all get your parking spaces, and we also have a community center for the city. Now this would, and a living history museum. And I know, Mayor, you said that you do not want any responsibility for running that property, and you don't want the city to own it, and I totally understand that. I totally get it. This would not have the city own any part of that house. We would suggest, I guess it's dividing a parcel. I'm not sure exactly on the terms. All the particulars of the regulatory particulars and all of that we would have to go through, of course. But to cut down that little parcel, and then you could have all the land you need and all the area for parking. And actually, I could really use some of that parking because people are going to be coming to the community center and to the museum. So that would work out best for both of us. And the nonprofit would be the one running and owning the property. So that's one idea, and this is just for consideration, and if we could talk about it, I obviously don't want a decision tonight or anything, but I'm just making a suggestion for you to consider. And we could also do something like this where the parking wraps like around the front. And I've been told there can be like a flag parcel done where I guess it's not a good thing for cities to have a flag parcel, but with a park, it's okay, more okay, because there's not going to be like a housing issue being a park. Okay, so these would be my suggestions of benefits. You'll get what you want as far as the city goes. You wouldn't be responsible for any of the upkeep of the house or anything. That would all be on the nonprofit. And the city would be really giving the neighborhood a benefit with the community center and history museum. And it is a wonderful green thing to do, because demolishing a house is actually unhealthy for it's unhealthy. It puts a lot of bad stuff in the air because there's no lead abatement when you tear a house down. And preserving in situ is actually safest for the house. And the Huntington House would be saved, and it also would be a historic preservation project, which would also give us like access to more grants. And we really have so many things we could do with the community center. We can have a lot of programming out of it, an office space for Let's Make a Difference with Michelle Powell. She's here tonight. And we've talked about the endless possibilities. She could lease office space upstairs. She needs more room for her community projects, for her kids during the summer, and that can be worked out in the house. There are so many possibilities. And that needs to be there in that neighborhood because it has to be walkable for the kids. It can't be located across the street or, across town or, down the way. The kids wouldn't be able to get there. They wouldn't be able to walk there. And also there are definitely grants, like the Bricks and Mortar Project grant through Ohio History Fund. We could have 40% match by the end of summer. We could definitely have it to apply for that. So I'm sure that we can make that work. Oops. And these were great quotes, and now so, great quotes. They were awesome quotes. And I can give anybody, here are some great quotes. Guardians of the Past, Bill Lamb, you said that.
Did I?
Yes, you did, and it was a great quote.
I'm good at that.
We have to be responsible to protect what is in the past. And this neighborhood specifically really would benefit from a community center. And that neighborhood, Ward 1 in general, I think, and hopefully our councilman would agree with me, we really need to reach out and do some extra to make those individuals feel a little bit more included in the town. And if we had like a Black History Museum section in the community center, wouldn't that be awesome? Because that's not in the mainstream museum. And there were definitely some African Americans who were key in the beginning of this town. So thank you very much for your consideration, and I hope to follow up with more information soon. Does anyone have any questions for me? Cut it out. Turn it up. Thank you.
I've never seen them.
Not that one.
Should be the sign.
There you go.
So, I don't know if anybody from the administration wants to comment tonight. We have 13 more items on the agenda tonight. I don't think we realized there was going to be a PowerPoint or a different proposal brought tonight, because I think where we all thought we were moving toward is that both the schools and the city said, have at it for moving it, and I think that's what we were all under the impression at our last meeting was where we were heading.
Absolutely.
So this is a little bit different approach, and I don't think we're going to have time right now to have this discussion.
Oh, that's fine. I wanted to present it and get that information.
Okay, so Mayor, whether, you know, administration and planning, I mean, there's obviously some questions that probably need to be answered, but we can look into that.
Well, just from a legal perspective, we can't just give land of the city to a particular
Oh.
group or
I
organization
wasn't asking to be given it. I was saying
Or
that
sell
if you
it.
said.
or sell it. We would have to put it on the market for everybody that wants an opportunity for it and have it. So it becomes a little bit more convoluted when a government entity, be it the schools or the city, owns it. So we have to work through some of those issues first.
Well, I'm sure if we could sit down and talk about
I
it.
just have one quick question. Susan, I missed the last meeting, I was out of town, but the conversation that I had was that you wanted time to find funds to move is that off the table now of trying to find funds to move it?
No, it's not all that much money to move it. It's the issue of, once we move it, all of the good things we could do with the house are not applicable if we move it to the other locations. I can't move a community center with kids programs to a couple of the places that there are available lots.
Okay,
And
thank
for
you.
reasons that don't need to be mentioned.
Thank you.
But are obvious.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation, and we'll discuss it, but unfortunately, we've got to keep moving through the agenda here tonight.
Thank you.
The next one is approval of MCRC sponsorship. I don't know, is that,
Yeah.
the mayor's got that one?
Okay, so this is from Mike. This is the first ad banner for the field house and will be placed between the two scoreboards. The brochure change for this was approved by Finance on 1/28/2019. The ad was already recommended by the Rec Advisory Committee on March 21st, and it's planned to be on the agenda for the schools to approve in April.
I can't remember, were we voting?
Just do a motion.
Just too much. Any questions?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Fund transfer request, parking fund, Mr. Durham.
Thank you. The parking fund does not make sufficient revenue to cover its operations, so we budget $60,000 a year, and then ask for the transfer as needed and it's needed.
Any questions? Entertain a motion.
Move to approve?
Second?
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Mr. Durham, it looks like you're the next one to a fund transfer request for the capital contribution.
This is per the agreement we have with the school for the joint operating agreement for the rec center. We each contribute $100,000 per year to our own fund for capital for things like the roof project that's coming up for building capital.
Any questions?
Move to approve?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. 19055, a then and now for M&L Supply for the fire department.
This is me as well. The fire department did what they were supposed to do. They put in a purchase order. The problem was this was a grant project, and the purchase order that they requested in advance of it was only for the city's share. But the city has to write a check for the whole amount because we're paying it and then being reimbursed on the grant. So I need the purchase order to be larger. Because of that, it becomes a then and now, so I need the approval.
Any questions? Entertain a motion.
Move to approve?
Second?
Your motion including,
My motion does include emergency clause.
Second include the emergency clause?
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. And also keep then and now for account management.
These next two, we could argue with the auditor that they're not technically then and nows, because if you look at this one, the period of this is September of 19 through August of 20, so it actually hasn't started yet. But they look at it by invoice date, and it's been invoiced before we got a purchase order, so it will be cleaner for our auditors to have the then and now approval.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion with the emergency clause.
Move to approve with emergency clause?
Second includes the emergency clause?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. And then Keith, you pretty much explained this next
Yeah,
one.
this is very similar. It's an annual membership. It is a then and now, technically only for a month, which is less than the 5,000, but it's part of the purchase order, so we need the approval for the whole thing.
Also with the emergency clause? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
Second with the emergency clause?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. 19058, the SPCA 2019 annual funding request. I know we have, Mr. Jenkins is here, and Mr. Rose, did you want to start, or?
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. As been the practice with the SPCA and myself for the last couple of years, Mr. Marcus and Mr. Jenkins, we've sat down, we reviewed the things that they've done the past year to keep their costs down, the number of animals that have been taken care of, if you will, for the city, and they have gone far and above what they need to do to keep things going. They have their own fundraisers now, as they did not have in the past. They're getting other sources of funding besides the city, and it's because they do perform a service for the community. I would recommend that we up our contribution to them from $86.70 last year to $88.50. It's a rounded up to 2%, as we've been giving other people and as we've given them in the past. So that would be my recommendation for $8,850 for our contribution.
Mr. Jenkins, would you like to speak on behalf of the SPCA, or Mr. Marquis?
We certainly appreciate the support you're offering to us. We work hard to take care of the animals. We took in 1,400 animals last year. And, every nickel we get, goes toward that. We have a lot of volunteers that go down there and spend their time. So anything you can offer, we greatly appreciate.
I did read recently where I believe that you did lose some funding.
We did.
In light of that, does that change what you're asking for from the city, or?
We'll take more.
What does that mean for your operation, though, with using that? What's the
Have to
plan?
dig deeper and keep looking for money, and we need to have some more discussions with the county.
And I think one of the things we always try to remind everybody is that we do not have an animal control department. We don't have a dog warden. We really have farmed these services out to the SPCA, who does a great job for us, and we do appreciate the work that you do for the city and the residents and the animals. So,
Thank you.
And we truly appreciate the efforts that particularly the police department give us. Anytime there's an issue, they've been very cooperative in helping us.
Mayor, anything from administration?
No, I think you covered it, Jim. I mean, otherwise, we would have to be contracting with either an animal control or hiring staff with benefits and wages, and the benefit that we're getting for this amount of money, I fully support it.
Any comments from other council members?
Like you, Jim, I think I read recently that their funding has been cut in from other sources, so, yeah, this is more than fair for us.
One thing that's been really helpful is that, I just want kind of an inter-council thing, is to compliment Paul for the working, with SPCA, so that we, when we come up with the figures, I'm all in favor of it. But you come up, by doing this, we can look at the actual figures, and we know that we're comfortable with our donation. That's been a big help, because, until you did that, it was sort of an eyeball. We were kind of eyeballing it, but you guys have worked together so well. It's a benefit to us. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Paul, for doing all the research.
With much appreciation, I move that the request be moved forward.
For $8,850.
$8,850.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it
very much.
19059 bids the 2019 concrete street report. Patrick?
Thank you. This is our annual project. It's the miscellaneous street repair throughout town. This year, we're asking for a total of $400,000. $375 from the street fund and $25 from the water department to take care of streets that were damaged during water breaks.
Any questions?
Is the list available for publication yet?
It is, yeah.
Can I get a copy?
Yeah,
Sure.
Patrick, could you send that to us?
Yep.
Thank you.
Move to approve?
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. And then also, Patrick, 19060, 2019 concrete curb installation program for East Liberty Street.
Yes, this is, we've established that we like to do these regular projects of installing curbs. This one is on East Liberty Street. They'll start near Broadway and extend east to Spring Grove.
Mr. Rose?
Is that work going to be done before or after parade season?
I hadn't thought about that.
Just a thought. Might want to think about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of it's a less intrusive project. In other words, they can do a lot and kind of clean up and get out of the way for a weekend parade type of thing.
Move to approve?
Second?
Any further discussion?
Well, the curb program, yeah, I appreciate the work the mayor's done with the administration, Patrick in particular, to do this because, you know, it's not only improved the one on East Washington a couple of years ago. I mean, it didn't just improve the visibility for those homes, those inner city homes on the state route, but it also improved the safety. You know, it's a really good improvement, and I appreciate how we all kind of work together to come up with a plan, do it every 2 years, fund it until those are done. And this is part of it. That's I just think it's an important project, and it demonstrates how well we can work together to get something like this done, where a lot of communities are struggling simply to fill potholes in a road, or because they can't afford to repave for it. And so I appreciate that help.
It makes such a difference too. It looks so nice when it's.
Every time I drive by the Washington, the East Washington, I look at the curbs, and it's funny what excites you when you get older. You know?
But it does make a big difference in the neighborhood.
Yes, it does.
Nice.
Having no curb on my street, I know that.
And I'd like to thank Mr. Lamb for initially putting the request to start this program.
Yeah.
It really has benefited the entire city.
Yeah, thanks for your support.
Any further discussion? Entertain a motion?
I move to approve.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. 19061, expenditure of over $15,000 for Davis Tree Farm. Ms. Jansen?
Yep. Thank you. This request is to increase our blanket purchase order that we have for spring and fall tree planting. We decided to increase some numbers, so we're hoping to get an increase in our purchase orders. We can do a little bit of larger spring planting this year. Right now, I think we're hoping to plant around 110 trees this spring.
And Jansen, some of this is also still replacing the trees that we removed then?
Yeah, a portion of this is for emerald ash borer replacements on Hillview Way. This also includes the trees for our median project on North Fork, as well as a large-scale replacement we're doing on North Huntington Street.
Any further questions, discussion? Entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Motion.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. 19062, cooperative purchasing for sodium chloride for the 2019-2020 snow season. Mr. Picoli.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. So we just received this option for a contract March 19th. The turnaround time is short, and you must have it back in Columbus by April 19th at noon. So that's why there's this clause requested.
And it still was snowing on Friday, so I guess this season's not completely over yet.
Correct.
Does this,
Mr. Rose?
Mr. McCauley, is this another one of those, whatever we buy, we have to take?
It is.
Or we don't pay for just what we
It's a 90%, I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that, it's the same contract we've had for years, so 90% of what we opt to purchase, and then we go up to 110%. So we use 2,000 tons, and that seemed to serve us well, rather than the higher amounts. It's a gamble, it's every year, they're asking us to play weatherman a year in advance.
So did you say 2,000 was the amount we purchased this year?
Correct, that was our contract bid.
And how much of that is left, if any?
No, we went above that, so we
Okay.
purchased more.
Move to approve with the emergency clause?
My second includes the emergency clause.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign.
Thank you.
19063, amend codified ordinance 945-022G regarding park restrictions and dogs on leash. Jansen?
Thank you. This request came about a couple months ago. It came to my attention that there were a number of park users essentially walking their dogs without having control of them on leash, specifically over at Huffman Cunningham Park and Reagan Park, where we have our single track mountain bike trails. A lot of people use it for hiking as well. And there's been a couple instances where there's been some conflicts because of the dogs running off leash in those areas. So once this came to my attention, I looked into the ordinance, and as it's currently written, our ordinance permits a dog to go doesn't permit a dog to go unleashed in any area unless they're under the reasonable control of a person, which is a little problematic in a park setting because it's hard to control your dog in those types of environments where there's wild animals, where there's kids playing soccer, so on and so forth. Furthermore, it doesn't align with 505.01, which is dogs and other animals running at large. It says that dogs can't run at large on any public place. So this is kind of a house cleaning request here. I looked into the Cleveland Metro Parks, Medina County Parks, which both have 8-foot leash law, where the leash must be held in hand. Comparatively, I wanted to look at other communities that had dog parks, because not every city has a designated area for off-leash dogs, like we do at Memorial Park. So the city of Wadsworth just opened a dog park, and the other example I provided was from the city of Stowe, which has one of the largest dog parks in Northeast Ohio at Bow Wow Beach. And it seemed pretty consistent that all of those had 8-foot leash laws, where the leash must be held in your hand, so the dog can't walk itself on an 8-foot leash. And there were some exceptions given for the dog park. So the request here is to pretty much make our ordinance in line with how the city of Wadsworth is set up, an 8-foot leash. The leash has to be in your hand unless you're in the inside the fence at the Memorial Dog Park. I think this will be easier to enforce because right now there's a lot of people without leashes at all, and then there's other individuals that are using the really long leashes on the multi-purpose trails that can be problematic for cyclists with not having explosive control of their animals. So respectfully ask that we consider making this change to increase the safety for all those using the parks.
And so you plan on like some signage in the parks then too, or?
Yeah, so this is another little bit of an issue. We do have signs already that say dogs must be leashed in parks. That's how this came to light. Was I had one person tell me you have signs that say they have to be on leash, but then our ordinance said otherwise. So once we get it cleaned up, we're going to improve the signage as well as help use our staff in the summer to get the word out to residents that are walking their dogs, as well as our social media avenues.
Any questions from council?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Excellent. All right, and then finally, 19064, expenditure for signal services for the street department.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. I included the quote, the police report. On January 20th, you see an unknown vehicle. We're not sure. We never were able to figure out who hit the master cabinet, but it was destroyed, taken off its base. It's about $11,332 to be exact on temporary emergency repairs on that day. And then the master cabinet to be replaced will be an additional $29,000. And you can see there's a credit for the controllers that they're able to saved from what was not damaged. The total's $33,882, so I'm asking for $34,000 to have that replaced and repaired.
It's been a long project.
Yeah. At the same time, this is the second incident. The first incident happened on Broadway in Liberty, and that was close to $35,000. And the street department keeps paying for these. I mean, we don't have a source to go after. Unfortunately, in this instance, there was an unknown driver. We talked about talking with the insurance company to submit this. I'm going to talk to Mr. Huber a little more. As long as it doesn't change the premiums that the city's obligated to pay, we can afford paying the $5,000 deductible. So we're pursuing that as well. This is like $75,000 worth of repairs that we've had in the last 2 years from master cabinets and electrical equipment that we had.
Now, the one up on the square, that was an accident where somebody was a high-speed chase.
Correct.
Whereas this one, it was probably related to weather that night?
It was that morning, yes. Yeah, it was a vehicle must have slid off the road. It was at 9:15 in the morning when officers Wilson and Terwilliger were there.
And they're in like the city right away, it's where they're
They are.
located, right? So they're always gonna be
Right behind
somewhere
the curb.
fairly close where a car can. Do other cities have this issue, you know? I mean, have you, like, that they've had?
They do. I was talking with Dave Bolton from Single Service, and you can see the officers they did a great job. They were setting up the four-way stop, temporary four-way stop signs, and Single Service was there on scene that quick. And we do talk to them regularly. They're from Maple Heights, and they service all the municipalities in between, and it happens. Some municipalities put the subdivisions and go after the insurance company, and some just pay for it like we've been. Just depends on the scenario.
Do they have anything they recommend that would make it a little safer, or at least safe? I mean, this is two pretty expensive ones in a short period of time, I guess.
They are. We could erect bollards, but then I guess there's a liability in talking. You erect a bollard and someone hits a bollard and gets killed. I'm not sure what will happen in that instance, so I don't know. I guess we could look into that. But we have 42 intersections and master cabinets at almost every location, so it's difficult to assess.
I guess it just, and this is a short period of time, we've had two. So-
It is, and that's disheartening. We had a $75,000 hit.
Yeah, they're expensive. The emergency clause been requested then?
Would you approve with the emergency clause?
I'm going to ask keep this fall under a then and now because the work was done. However, we don't have an invoice. It's quoted here. It was an emergency repair, so I'm not sure if we need to address that.
Technically, it would.
So do you want to
Yeah.
do this part and then bring it back?
You Go ahead and approve the expenditure, and we'll determine the then and now for payment.
The next finance meeting then?
Bless you.
Okay.
All right, second includes the emergency clause?
Any further discussion? All in favor, say
Aye.
aye. Opposed, same sign. Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else to bring brought before finance tonight?
Should we change the name of our dog park to Beat Cooter?